my name is Sue, and on this channel I'm talking about the music industry, and I'm gonna give you as independent artists and bands advice on music marketing. In this video I'm gonna talk about music promotion. So you have a release ready, you want to get it out and you want people to listen to it. So I'm gonna give you some tips and I'm gonna give you a checklist that you can follow to actually promote your music. The music industry today looks very, very different than it did a couple of decades ago. One of the main reasons is streaming and download. Most of your fans are going to listen to your music on Spotify or Apple Music or platforms like those. That also means that the release strategies have changed significantly in the last couple of years. A lot of artists are mainly releasing singles these days, and the main reason for that being so they can actually be in a constant dialogue with their fans and also want to have a positive impact on the algorithms of the streaming and download platforms. In general, my opinion is that you as a musician, you should choose what seems best for you. So if you want to release an album, that's totally fine. But there are a few reasons why you should definitely consider releasing singles as well. And if you are releasing an album, you might want to put out a few singles before that. The main reason, again, are the algorithms of the streaming and download platforms. You want to make sure that you really use every single piece of content to the fullest and actually create some kind of momentum and gain the attraction of your fans over a longer period of time than just a few months. The algorithms these days, and it actually doesn't matter if it's YouTube or streaming platforms or also Instagram, really reward people who create constant content. So in this example, I'm just going to assume you want to put out an EP and maybe release a single or two before that. You have your EP ready to be released. You can't just drop it to the shops and expect the streams to come in by themselves. There are 40,000 songs that are uploaded to Spotify every single day. So there is quite some competition. So you really have to sit down and actually think it a bit through and make a plan and also a release calendar to actually make sure you have the impact that you would like to have. Once you've figured out how many singles you want to release and before your actual big release, you have to also answer a few questions. First question you want to answer is, how can you generate more fans? How can you generate more streams? And how can you involve your fans into the whole story of your new release? The second question you want to answer is, how is this release part of the story of your band? How can you actually continue the story that you've been telling before already? And the third question, and we've already covered that a bit, is how can you have the best impact on the algorithms of the streaming and download platforms? It doesn't really matter how many singles you release, you just really need to consider taking a month or two between every single so you have enough time to create a story and to use your content to actually track attention. Let's get to step one in my, promotion and release checklist. That is physical copies of your release and merchandise. If you actually decide to create physical copies of your record, which will be a vinyl or a CD, that is definitely the one thing you want to start with first, because it can take a couple of weeks or months until that is done, and you want to make sure your physical copies are actually there when your release hits the stores. The same obviously for merchandise. If you want to print t-shirts or whatever else you want to create merchandise-wise, you want to make sure you do that well in advance. There's going to be a point when you also are going to start touring and playing shows again, and you want to have all of that ready so you can actually sell merch at shows, which is a very important source of income for your shows. So what does it actually also need to consider when you want to do vinyl or CD? There are a few visuals and a few assets you have to create before that, and it will also take a couple of weeks, so make sure you plan in enough time for that. That will obviously be the artwork for your release, a sleeve for your vinyl, and also maybe a lyrics sheet or a booklet. On the other hand, another thing you will need is a barcode and the ISRC. A barcode is a unique identification number for your release. If you're also releasing digitally, you have to make sure that the barcode you're using there is also usable for physical copies of your release. That is not always the case, but it also isn't a big issue. There are a lot of platforms online where you can buy a barcode for your physical releases. It doesn't really matter if you have the same barcode for your physical copies and for your digital release. What is way more important are the ISRCs. Those are the unique identification codes for your tracks, so for your songs. And those can definitely be the same for your digital and also for your physical release. The ISRCs store all all the information regarding your tracks. So they actually also contain the streaming numbers, the download numbers, and also the numbers of physical copies that have been sold. You really want to make sure that you're using the same ISRCs on your tracks digitally as well as physically. All right, so you ordered your merch, you ordered your vinyl or CD. Now we can move on to actually prepare your first single release. I just assume you might want to just release that single digitally. The only reason for a single release in the first place is that you actually want to be in favor of the algorithms. It's a very tough word because of the algorithms on the streaming and download platforms. So you don't necessarily have to release it physically. You want to let your fans and your new fans and potential fans know that there's actually something coming. It doesn't really matter how many singles you release before your EP or album. There is no too much today. There are a lot of bands that release 10 singles these days and then they drop their album with all those 10 singles on them. So you've set your release dates for each single and the EP or the album. The next thing you want to do is actually update your profiles. That means your profiles on Spotify, your profile on Apple Music, your profile on your website. It is very important that you regularly update your bio. And that is because you are also gaining new fans and they might not know your story yet. So you want to make sure you have your band history and story in your bio, as well as the new things that are happening and maybe tours that are planned or releases that are coming. Another thing that I find very important, especially on your profiles on the streaming and download platforms, is to add links, because you want to make sure that people also check out your other channels. And the same, for example, for Instagram, you also want to make sure you link to your Spotify account there, because you want to make it as easy as possible for your fans to follow you on each platform and to listen to your music. Another general thing that I really recommend you to do is actually invite your fans on social media to also follow you on Spotify and other music platforms. The only reason for that being, it is really good for the algorithm. The algorithm is going to notice when you get more followers. And then on the other hand, you also later want to pitch your music to playlists. If you pitch your music to playlists and you have followers, they are actually going to have your new release on their personal Spotify release radar playlist automatically. So if you have 1,000 followers, you already have 1,000 playlist ads on release date, which does not sound too bad, I would say. After you've ordered your merch, you've actually updated your profiles everywhere, the next thing you really want to work on is images and pictures. There is a new release coming and you want your existing fans to know that there's something else coming. So what better way to do that than to update your pictures on all your platforms? You want to make sure that you're using the same visuals on all the channels and platforms, because the people who are just discovering your music might not know that they're on the right page. So make sure you create a whole visual asset of different pictures that you can use for profile pictures, banners, posts, etc. If you, for example, have a banner or a cover image on Facebook, you might as well extend the background of your image and add some additional information, like, for example, new record coming soon, album out now, or even add your tour dates to it so people know right away what's happening in your life. There are a lot of bigger artists who are obviously not following any of those rules because they don't have to, but if you are an artist who's just starting out, you really want to make sure that you give your fans and potential fans all the information they need, and also so they get an impression of what you are about. So you're done with the photos, you can check that box. So we're going to move on to the next item on our checklist, which is the music video and or the lyric video. A music video is very important for you because it just is another piece of content to extend your actual content over a longer period of time. So you just have another item you can actually share with your fans. A music video these days doesn't have to be expensive at all. Every one of us has a smartphone, and the quality of an iPhone and similar phones is pretty good these days. You might as well just go find some nice spots in your city and just shoot a nice video with your phone. An alternative to that is a lyric video. I've never been a big fan of lyric videos myself, but I have to admit I learned my lesson. It is another piece of content you can actually use to tell your story, so why not also go with that? You just will be able to share more content with your fans. So you have a music video for your first single. When it comes to releasing those songs, you actually want to release the audio, so the track on Spotify and Apple Music first before you release the video. That is just because your fans will have listened to the audio, but then you're basically offering them an even nicer piece of content because there also is a video with that song. If you do it the other way around, there might not be that much excitement for the actual track after you've already released the video. Another option for you, which is diving deeper into the PR world and the PR part of your release strategy, is video premieres. There are a lot of blogs and online magazines that like to premiere videos on their platform. You have to understand that some of those magazines and blogs will want to have exclusive rights for that video premiere. Just be aware of that, and if that is not an issue for you, it is a great way to have a wider reach. We are still in the preparation phase for your release. Your release is still a month away, the first single. So the next step you want to take is playlist consideration and pre-save links. Spotify playlist pitching and playlist pitching in general, because that also accounts for a few other platforms out there, is one of the most important things you have to do in the current music industry. I'm going to actually explain this with the example of Spotify playlists because Spotify has an own feature for actually pitching your songs to Spotify editors. If you want to pitch your songs to Spotify editors, you really want to do that at least 2 to 4 weeks in advance to your release. That way, you really give the editors enough time to actually listen to your song and to look at your bio, etc. Apart from the official playlists, which you can pitch to through the integrated Spotify tool, there are also a lot of unofficial playlists on Spotify that you might also want to give a try to. Usually, a lot of editors for those playlists mention their email address or any social media account in the description of the playlist, so definitely check those out as well. Another very important topic are pre-save links for Spotify. A pre-save link and a pre-save page gives you the opportunity to share your song that is not released yet with your fans. They can, on the other hand, actually pre-save that song to their own Spotify library, and the day of release, that song is going to be automatically showing up in their library. Similar to the pre-save links, you can also set up pre-orders on certain shops, for example, iTunes. Once again, playlists, pre-save links, and pre-orders are very, very important for you because they all tackle the Spotify algorithm or the algorithms of the streaming and download platforms in general. That way you might end up on more algorithmic playlists after your song is released. We're now moving on to your own channels, which means your social media channels, your website, and all those platforms where you are able to share whatever you like with your fans. As I've mentioned before, you are competing with 40,000 other songs that are being uploaded every day to Spotify and other streaming and download platforms. So you really want to make sure that you let your fans and potential fans know that there's something new coming. And you put so much effort into the production of your photos and also of your videos, so now is the time to start sharing this content. The first part here is obviously to update your profile pictures and your banners everywhere. That should happen, I want to say, maybe a month in advance to your first single release. You should at least update all that material though when you start pitching to Spotify playlists, because you want also the editors to know that there is something new happening and coming up. The closer you get to the release date of your first single, the more you want to share on your social channels. And you have a lot of material now that you can actually share. There's a lot of pictures, there is a music video, there's a lot of behind the scenes material as well. You can, for example, share also a short video when you recorded your song in the studio or outtakes from your video shoot. If you share all that with your fans, they start to get the feeling that they're kind of part of your journey, and that is exactly what you want to create. You want to take them on your journey to make sure they're already excited and waiting for your new release. Same is obviously for press and reviews. It's just a good habit to actually share that content because somebody put really a lot of time into reviewing your record, so make sure you let your fans know. On the day of the release, you also want to share the artwork of your release because that is the end product and you're very proud of it, so definitely share it. And also, if your song has been added to some playlists on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever, also share that with your fans because it is definitely something you should be proud of. You really want to also put some time and effort into PR. And that basically means online magazines, but even print magazines, local newspapers, radio stations, music blogs, and YouTube channels that cover music. I recommend you actually start creating a media list, I want to say. It's like a list, your personal influencer list with contact details and also some notes when you already have been in touch with those people. You're always going to come back to that list, so make sure it's neat and tidy. PR is a very important tool because you want also people to know about your music who have never heard about you before. Magazines and blogs are an awesome way to do that. Your media list is, of course, a living document. It's going to take a while until you have all those contacts together, but when you're just starting out, just start with a handful of media outlets and contacts. I also recommend you start with some local newspapers and local magazines because those are always looking for local talent. Same is for local radio stations. There are some community radio stations and some college radio stations that are actually on the hunt for new local talent. So also here, just drop them a note, send them a nice email, and introduce your project to them. Of course, your overall goal probably is to be featured on Pitchfork or Billboard, but that is not going to happen overnight. So really start with local outlets. Maybe look also for more genre-specific magazines and blogs, and your chances are going to be way higher to get featured there. I really also want to tell you to not be discouraged if it doesn't work out right away. PR is always a long-term process because those people just need to hear your name maybe a couple of times until they start recognizing that there's actually something going on and that you keep putting out music. When you pitch your song to media outlets, you should obviously make sure that you share all the necessary information with them and everything that might be interesting for them. This can be a press release, this can be an electronic press kit, or a one-sheet. Depending on what exactly you're pitching to the media outlet, so is it just your song, the audio file, or is it a music video, you should of course also send a private link to that song or that video. You have to give those journalists the chance to actually listen to your music before it's being released, or also watch the video before it comes out. A good option for that, for an audio file for example, would be just to send a private SoundCloud link, and for a video that will obviously be an unlisted video on YouTube. A lot of more professional artists are actually creating EPKs, which is usually gated content on their website, or they create one sheet, which is usually a PDF that contains all the info that I just mentioned. It is totally fine if you just start with an email to the media outlets though and put all the information there. On the day of the release, obviously what you want to do is share the news that your new record is actually out. And you should also replace your banners and cover images, for example on Facebook, with "new record out now." If you get press for your new release or you are added to a playlist, definitely make sure you also share that. Maybe you have even other bonus content like a remix or a live version, or you recorded an acoustic version of a song. Definitely make sure that you have enough content also saved for after the release date. It doesn't really matter how many singles you put out or if it's an EP or an album, the steps are always the same. Of course, there's way more detail to all the separate checklist points, and we're definitely going to make sure that we shoot a video on each of those points again in the future. And on our 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏 weekly playlist, we're gonna add the song "Reach Out" by 𝗠𝗨𝗏𝗏 today. Definitely check out our playlist. It's a really fun playlist. I'm sure you're gonna like it. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and if you do not want to miss out on my videos about the music industry and about music marketing tips for you as independent artists, be sure to subscribe to the channel. That will definitely help us to make more videos for you. And I'm going to see you next week.